Hi, and welcome to all of you who are out there. This is going to be a great APUSH lesson for teachers on kind of how to create a positive culture and have a little fun in sometimes what can be a very intense course. So just kind of to get a heads up of who's out there, kind of introduce yourself, tell us how long you've been teaching APUSH. Feel free to ask questions as we go along, or if you have any concerns about the course, anything like that. Please feel free to put that in the comments, and I'll make sure to address as much of it as I possibly can. You will meet my cats, I'm sure, along the way as we continue this, because they like to always jump in and cause some havoc out there. So just to get started, just some of our upcoming APUSH events, and a lot of these upcoming ones are going to be more student-directed, but always teachers are more than welcome to jump in and learn a little bit, engage in conversation with the students along the way. First up here is where you can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure to check us out. And then these are the upcoming events we have going. So we have the French and Indian War and the results of that war. That's going to be next week, 7 p.m. Central Time. Reasons for growing calls for independence, September 24th, 7 p.m. Central Time. The American Revolution on September 25th, and then key documents and foundations of the American Revolution on September 26th. So really jumping in to the beginning of our country and our great history. So check out all those events if you have the opportunity to next week. So just to get started, a little bit about what you can expect tonight during this live stream. We're going to really look at the APUSH classroom. We're going to look at how do you maintain the high expectations that are really expected in this class experience, but also keeping it light at the same time, right? Because we can't just be pounding away every single day with our students and not giving them a second to have fun and really take in everything that they're learning. But at the same time, in a year to get in all of American history for that AP exam in May, that's a huge crunch to get done. So we're going to look at how we can find that balance within the classroom. We're also going to look at ways to create a positive culture, how it is that we can make the students kind of come to life with American history, how we can make it that they're constantly wanting to talk about it, ask questions, and make sure that they're really relating it between what happened in the past and then really what's going on today as well, and what's going to come in our future. And then we will end the lesson today with specific examples of ways to really bring on fun in the classroom. So I'm going to go over some of the things I do in my classroom that are fun for me, fun for my students, because really to have that positive classroom experience, you need everyone to be involved in it, right? It can't just be the students having fun with the teacher not having fun. It can't just be the teacher having fun without the students having fun. It's really got to be a group experience here happening. So let's get started with high expectations versus keeping it light. So day one of the class, first thing I do is kind of discuss the AP standards. For sure, you have the white-faced students kind of freaking out a little bit about everything that we do need to cover within the year. But it's important that they kind of understand the workload that's ahead of them. And there are high standards. I mean, there's high standards that I set personally in my class, but then there's high standards that College Board and the AP exam sets themselves. So we go over all those standards. And then after I've completely freaked them out for the first half of class by going over those standards, I like to show them a Lin-Manuel Miranda clip. Before Hamilton came out, when he was still actually in the writing process of putting Hamilton together, he performed at a White House poetry event, and he performed the opening song from Hamilton. And it's just very lighthearted. It's fun. It shows students that, history can be fun. It can be musical. There can be so many things you can do with history instead of just sitting there and taking notes every single day. And so it kind of alleviates some of the stress that students had from the first part of class, where they're really freaking out, thinking about all the work that they're going to have this year, everything they need to accomplish, all the information, all the essays. And now we can kind of have a light moment and see where there are going to be fun aspects of class. And that's really what I try to do in every class, right? You always have to have the serious of there's certain content, there's certain skills that we need to accomplish each and every day. there's really hardly time to have like kind of a full light day. So if you can mix it in where you have half the class being super serious and then the second half of the class still being educational and getting in the skills and getting in the content, and finding a way to deliver it where it is more lighthearted, it is more enjoyable. It's not just a lecture style that has come to be known for many of these history classes. These guys are killing me tonight. That's when your students are really going to really take in the history class experience, and that's what we want. We don't want them to walk away from history class with, okay, I complete my AP U.S. history, my 1 year of American history that I need. I'm done, never going to look at it again, right? We want them to walk away, one, wanting to take more history courses if they have the option in their later years in high school, but also wanting to continue with their study of history as they get into college and even afterwards. Because it's something, history I find, and I'm sure people who teach math or science will say the same about their subjects, but history I find is a subject that even as adults, we all need it. As we're voting and everything else is going on in the world, it's something that we constantly need to know what's going on. And so if we can create that love in the APUSH classroom, goal accomplished, right? And then the last thing, as far as high expectations and keeping it light, we have to find a way to teach students that you can analyze documents, you can talk about point of view and all the different historical thinking skills that are required, and you can have the high standards of you have to get these skills accomplished, but we can find ways to relate it to today. And so later on, I'm going to go over a specific example of point of view and how you can kind of bring it home for students in their own world. And that's important too with any of these documents. Anytime we're talking about something in history, currently in my class, we're on period 2 of U.S. history. We're really just getting through the colonies and the differences between the Chesapeake and the New England colonies. And anytime I can try to relate it to today to make it more concrete for them because it's something that they understand because it's taking place today, that's when it's going to become more real for the students. And that's when they're really going to jump in and enjoy that information. Are there any questions or any comments or anything yet before we kind of move into more of this lesson today? All right, so I'm just going to keep going then. So here are some specific ways, right, to create a positive culture with some specific examples. I know sometimes when I go to a PD session, people talk and talk and talk, but when they can give me specifics, that's what's really going to help. So again, one of the things I just ended the last slide with is the importance of making learning relevant to a student's life. And so one of the ways I do this, point of view, obviously huge when we're talking about the DBQ and other parts of the exam. And a lot of times students don't understand point of view. I'm always struck by the fact that students can read documents and they're always like, oh, well, there's no bias in that. People are saying what the truth is. And so it's very hard for students to kind of get that there's always kind of an internal bias in every document and to find ways for them to understand that. So one thing I do is I use a football example. And so basically, I give them documents that are from different people who attended a football game. And I tell them, I wasn't able to attend the game, but I'm trying to get an idea of what happened. I know the final score, and I heard about the final touchdown, but I want an idea of what really happened to secure that final touchdown. And so what I do is I give them set up straight like a DBQ. So it'll be like document A, and it'll be the point of view of the coach of the winning team. And then document B, it'll be the quarterback who threw the pass. And I go through all these different people. And it even goes to the losing team too. And so it'll be the defense and the head coach from the losing team. Then there'll be bystanders from each team who were just in the stands watching it. And then there'll be the local news reporter who also gives a little blurb about the last few seconds of the game. And so we kind of go through each person and talk about what their point of view might be. And for students, when you do it that way, it's very easy for them to think about, okay, well, the head coach of the winning team is going to have a bias because they won the game. And then the head coach of the losing team might say there was something a little bit shady about that last play because they lost the game. And we kind of go through each person and talk about what their specific point of view was. How is it that they're looking at that game and how that game was won? And that's really what brings it home for the students. After that, they really start to understand point of view. They start to analyze documents a little bit better. And it's just because we did an example that really was able to relate to their lives, and that helped them out a great deal. Another thing I like to do is I like to let students take the lead in the class. I'm not the type of teacher that likes to stand up there and lecture. We have 75-minute periods. So I'm not going to stand up there and kind of talk for 75 minutes straight. There's just no possible way that that can get done. So as much as I can bring students into the class and let them take the lead, so this could mean a multitude of different things, right? It could mean one day, assigning students to start off the class with a specific topic or a specific event that they need to be prepared to lead the discussion about. So maybe all the students were going to read about the Constitutional Convention, but 2 specific students are assigned to have come up with the questions that are going to start off the class, and then be prepared to have kind of answers to those questions to get the conversation going if people are being reticent about speaking. At times, as much as we have a textbook, we use the American Pageant, but at times it's also better to let students kind of go out and get their own sources. And so sometimes I won't assign textbook pages, but I'll just say, you need to learn about the Boston Massacre, and you need to tell me the British soldier opinion, you need to tell me the American colonist opinion, and then you need to, from those 2 opinions, come together and tell me what happened at the Boston Massacre. Bringing in all those different sources. And by allowing students to kind of take ownership of their learning in that way, it actually creates kind of more of an enthusiasm for them, because they're not just sitting there reading a textbook and taking notes. Now they're kind of going out there trying to find the best sources that they possibly can to come up with these answers about what actually happened, again, with my example, at the Boston Massacre. Anytime you can create experiences for your class in the school. So I do this a couple different ways. I've done it where, again, going off of that Hamilton example in a sense, we'll sometimes, I'll get my students to take a popular song and then rewrite the lyrics to that song based on an event from history or some of the presidents from history. And then I've had in the past them kind of perform it in our general homeroom atmosphere for the whole school to watch it. So that's kind of cool, because not only does it get your students excited because they want to kind of perform for everyone, but 2, you're also getting other classes excited to then take APUSH in the future, right? So you're generating that enthusiasm, not just with your current students, but with but then with your future students that are also going to enter the classroom. Another thing I'd like to do is this year, for the first time, we're going to start making newscasts. And so my AP students right now are going to work on a monthly basis on creating a newscast about American history or our American government. So they're going to be making these newscasts. Hold on one second. They're going to be making these newscasts that will then stream throughout the school for all the students in the school to see, all the teachers in the school to see, the administration to see. And that's just going to be a great way, again, to connect all the students together with this experience of what's going on in American history. And it's getting your students to take their learning of American history to an even deeper level, because they're the ones that are going to have to do all the research for those newscasts. They're going to have to write the scripts. They're going to come up with the scenery that's going to appear on the green screens, which they're getting super excited for that part of it. But again, it's taking them beyond that textbook and making them research a little bit further. And I think they kind of have John Green in mind as they're making these newscasts, because they also want to bring in talking about famous documents from American history, which, as you all know, is an important part of the AP exam. So anytime they're just getting that access to looking at documents that might then suddenly appear on the exam, that's going to be huge for them, because just knowing that it's something they've seen before will make them comfortable when they then do sit for that exam. Learn together. This is another big one, right? Like, I don't want just my students learning something new. I want to be learning something new every day as well when I'm in class with them. So that's really important. I'm never afraid to let students know when they ask a question if I don't know the answer, or if they share something new or ask a question that takes the conversation in a totally different but awesome direction, which is my favorite part of class. Like, I always thank them for bringing me into that learning experience. And I think that's important too. So your students see that you're constantly learning. It's going to engage them to also be learning. And a lot of times you might even have students who kind of want to go out of their way to bring you new information. I had an awesome, like just fantastic group of APUSH students last year who, because they became so engaged in the classroom experience and what they were learning, were just constantly going home and finding cool articles to connect to things we were talking about in class. And it might have been articles about specific events we were talking about in class, or articles like from current events that are happening today that's somehow related to something we were talking about in class. And they would just email them to me at night. And like that just made me super excited that they were that engaged in the class, that they were going out of their way to look for that information. And I let them know how much I appreciated that. And then fail together. You know, like I think that's a big thing too. Like the AP exam is hard. I think it's important for them to understand that. There's multiple choice questions. When I look at some of them, I'm like, you know, I even have to sit there and really think deeply about that. And I let them know that. I think sometimes as teachers, we kind of want to be perfect in the classroom, but I think anytime that we can show, not that we failed, but that we also need help with something, or that maybe we don't know it all, I think that's always a great thing for students to see. Okay, any questions or anything on anyone's mind? All right, so we're also going to use social media when appropriate. I know some schools have all different rules and regulations about social media and when it can't be used, especially regarding students. So one, if your school allows students to use social media or create accounts for your history class, that's an awesome thing. That's a great way to engage students. If you could have an APUSH class Twitter page or a Facebook page where students can take turns each week posting, whether they're posting for the class or they're posting as a historical figure. Any of that is great because, again, you're engaging them in their world. And anytime we can meet students in their world, that's when they're really going to have the best learning experience. For schools, my school's one where we kind of stray away from that right now, that we don't really want class Twitter pages or class Instagram pages. One thing that I really like to do is use Fakebook, or even there's a fake Twitter page you can use, where students, it's something that will only be seeing you within the school or within your class, and you don't have to worry about other people from outside the school with privacy issues and everything. You don't have to worry about them seeing it. And so that's really a great way, because having students tweet as historical figures, having students kind of connect with each other and talk to each other as different historical figures. Sorry, my cats are getting in a lot of trouble tonight for whatever reason. That's going to make a huge difference as well. Because again, they're so used to Twitter, they're so used to Facebook nowadays. If you get them out of their zone and, you know, having a conversation, one student's Alexander Hamilton and one student's Aaron Burr, and they're tweeting back and forth at each other, and, you know, then throwing Thomas Jefferson into that conversation. I think that's a huge thing to do as well, because when they have to take on that persona of someone else, there's a lot of research that they got to do to get into that persona so they best understand how to represent that person, and then also understand the intricacies of that relationship between the two, right? So it's not just Alexander Hamilton having a general conversation with Aaron Burr, but that student would really have to research, okay, if these two gentlemen had Twitter, what is it that they would be talking about? Would it be a cordial conversation? Would it be angry conversation? What is it that they would be saying with each other? Consistency is huge. You know, you have to make sure every day you're consistent with your students. They know your expectations. You know, you don't want to come in one day and be one way and come in another day and be another way. Them knowing what to expect, knowing that you can have fun and learn at the same time, that's a big thing for students. They get more nervous at times when it's like, oh, what is it we're going to be doing today, or what's going to happen today, or how is our teacher going to respond to us? Showing your students consistency is just going to give them this comfort level that's going to help them engage more in the classroom. I have a comment, so I'm going to stop for a second. What you just said about not being afraid to say you don't know is important. Show your students. Exactly, yeah. I show my students all the time I'm not a know-it-all. But no, it's super important because I think that's the one thing that sometimes scares students in an AP classroom. The fact that they think, this is an expert on hand. And so that does really scare students. I think my screen, my screen stopped sharing for 1 second. So let me just see if I can fix that. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's get back to this. Oh, okay. So I think Remind helps. So I've never heard of Remind. Is that an app or a website? Because that sounds like something that would definitely, oh, cool. I'm definitely going to have to check that out. Do you use that? Is that something you're using in your classroom currently? Because my students are all about the different apps and the different websites. They're loving Fiveable right now, and all the videos and everything that they have access to watch. Oh, wow. All right. That's pretty cool. Okay. That's awesome. It's funny because all my classes, because I teach AP Government and then APUSH, and all my classes have a group chat that they use on textbooks, on text to send reminders to each other. And they're always frustrated when the teachers can't be involved in it. So that's something really cool. I'm going to have to check out. Thank you for sharing that. Check-in surveys. Great system, but never tried with the class. Oh, I might have to try that with my fantasy teams then too. I didn't even think of using it for that. So check-in surveys, I like to do these all the times with my students. And it's just what it says it is. Check in what is going well in class and what is going terrible in class. And being able to own whatever it is they tell you that is going terrible. And, that's a learning lesson and something that's important to model for students as well, how to take that constructive criticism. And I always find it very interesting, too, that sometimes students can be really, really good about providing such helpful information because they see it from a different perspective of what's going on. And sometimes they can really hit the nail on the head and kind of say, this is going great, but this is where it's going wrong. Maybe if you try this, this is what's going to end up helping get us back on track. And so I do check-in surveys. I try to do them, I'll do one in October just to see how the first month went, especially because a lot of my students, this is their first AP they're taking. So I like to check in with them in the beginning. And then I'll probably check in right before the holidays or when we return from our holiday break again. And then I'll check in at the end of the school year just to see if there's any helpful advice that they might be able to offer for next year. So I usually use Google Forms to do the surveys just because they're so easy to collate and get back. And I set it so that it's done anonymously so students don't have to be afraid of whatever it is that they want to put down, because I know that's a concern of students sometimes. So they don't have to log into anything. They can just do it that way. And Google Forms are really cool as far as the setup they give you. So you can ask on that Google form very general questions. So then it's, A, B, C, D answers, and then they'll give you these really cool pie charts and stuff. And then you can ask, the questions where students can fill out more of a paragraph or a couple sentences. And then it'll break it down for you nice. So it's very easy to read those surveys. And then building relationships, positive relationships between teacher-student and student-student. A lot of times I think we tend to focus on the teacher-to-student relationship, right? That we want to have this relationship where they feel they can ask us questions, they can come to us for whatever they need. But sometimes we lose sight of, if you really want to have a positive classroom experience, you have to have a student-to-student relationship too, right? You have to make sure your students are not only comfortable with you, the teacher, but that your students are also comfortable with each other. And so we do a lot of group work in class, whether it's analyzing documents. We do a fantasy game, similar to fantasy football, only it's fantasy states, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But anything that can be fun, bring the groups of students together, allow them to get to know each other a little bit, feel more comfortable with each other. That's going to help you build that student-to-student relationship where then they're going to be helping each other learn. They're going to be helping each other study before different exams come up. And then the last thing for this slide is just be available. Let your students know, whether it's email, that remind, which I'm totally going to check out because I think that's a great idea. We have a class website where students can comment and leave questions. We have office hours, whatever it is, let your students know you're there for them should they have questions. Usually in the beginning of the school year, I force them to meet with me one-on-one just so they get that under their belt and they realize it's not a scary experience. I definitely force them to meet me after their first writing assignment. So after they do their first DBQ and their first long essay, we sit down one-on-one and we go over everything together. And usually I'll use class time to do that, where I'll give the rest of the class an assignment and I'll pull desks out into the hallway and just meet with a student one-on-one out in the hallway as the rest of the class is doing something. But just because I think it's important, especially with DBQs and long essays, to get that one-on-one time to talk about this is what went well and this is where you should work for the next DBQ or the next long essay. So these are some of the fun stuff I do in the class to bring on the fun, or at least I find it fun. And the first thing is what I was just alluding to as far as the fantasy game. So we started off our first week of school with what was a fantasy draft of states. So classes were divided. My APUSH classes, I teach 2 sections. They were divided into small groups within each section, and each section did their own draft. And so what they did was they were each allowed to draft as a team 3 states for their team. And then using the New York Times, they will get points for how many times their states are mentioned by the New York Times. And right now we're using a program that the program actually does it all for us. Every night it's updating how many times that state received news. And so they're paying attention to current events and all of that. The way I bring in APUSH is now that I've kind of sucked them into this game and they're super excited about this game, a month from now, which they don't know is going to happen, but happens, what's going to happen is we're going to change the game that we're not going to be basing their points on current events, but in order for them to get points, they're going to have to, as we study each different time period in American history, turn into me by looking up on their own what was happening in those states that they've drafted on their team. So at this point, if they want to earn points for the rest of the school year, what they'll have to do is say, okay, if I have the state of Maryland and we're in the 1800s, I need to be looking up what was going on in Maryland in the 1800s. And the onus then is on that team to turn it into me, and then I'll manually give them the points. So I start off by getting them into the current events part of it, and then I make it so that they now, instead of the computer doing it all and scoring it for them, they now have to, if they want to get points for their team, they have to look at their states throughout history and turn in events, major historical figures, anything big that happened in that state that they have during our AP US history time periods. And so because competition is probably huge in any school, I know it's big in mine, and there's a super cool trophy that the winning team gets at the end. They really get into this as far as researching all the different Civil War battles when we get to that time period and if it impacted their state at all. They're researching all the different elections, how their state voted. I mean, it's going further than even stuff that's not even needed on the AP exam. They're just taking it to this whole new level of really understanding the United States. And even though it's topics that might not come up on the exam itself, it's stuff they can use when they're doing their writing portions of the exam. And they just have a better understanding of how the country interacts. And it's all for a dinky little trophy with a globe on top. But they love it because it's this competition, and they all play fantasy football, so it's got that same aspect to it. We also watch Mr. Betts videos, and if you haven't watched Mr. Betts videos, you should check out the link and watch Mr. Betts videos. This guy's a history teacher who in his spare time just makes videos based on popular songs. So from like Taylor Swift to some great rap artists, to some old school songs from like the 70s to Broadway hits. I mean, he takes any song that's out there and then really makes it to a historical event. And so that helps students a lot as well, because a lot of them just enjoy music, and the songs literally will get stuck in your head when you listen to them. And so that's something that they really enjoy. And so I try to throw in at least one song a day if possible. So in yesterday's class, again, we were studying the New England colonies, and we did, what was it? I'm trying to think what the song he did was. It was Miley Cyrus, something in the USA, Party in the USA or something, I think it was. And then he went through the reason why all the different colonies were created. And it was just awesome. And the kids were sitting there singing it to themselves. But it also helped them remember, the difference between the religious motivation in New England and then the money motivation in the Chesapeake colonies. Similar to that, rap music battles, Channel Hamilton. I try to pit my two sections against each other because they're super competitive, and see who can come up with the best rap or the best song. And then we'll have like a sing off or a rap off. And it's just a lot of fun. They have fun with it. But anytime you're making music lyrics like that, you're just totally getting to know the information. I mean, it's really, really fun to see them do that. Kahoot is a great standby. We use Kahoot before a test. Again, it's that competition aspect. And Kahoot is just great because it gives you a good way. It's not so much skill testing with Kahoot, but it just lets you know where the students stand as far as content is concerned. And so I like to use Kahoot just so students have an understanding of this is the information they know well, content-wise, and this is the information where maybe prior to a test they should go back and study. And then the final game that we play, and we did this prior to the exam in May last year, it's called Fishbowl. And it's a 3-round game, and they go crazy for this game to the point that we actually had to schedule their lunchtime so they play this game because they wanted more time to be able to go at it. And they also wanted to compete against the other sections. But what this game is, it's similar in a sense to charades. So every student gets the opportunity to throw in 5 phrases, historical figures, historical events, whatever it might be. And we put them into a big fishbowl, and then they're divided into teams. And so in the first round, when they're playing, one person comes up and they pick up the first clue or whatever it is. And in the first round, you're just basically describing whatever that clue might be. You're trying to get students to guess the clue through your description. And then once we go through all those clues, we then put them back into the fishbowl for the second round. And the second round, it's the same clues now. Second round is no words. You just got to act it out. So it's the charades part of it. And so then they guess all the different clues. And then we put them all back again into the fishbowl. And then the third round, using the same clues again, is just one word. So now you have one word to describe what that person did or what that event is that's on that card. And the kids go crazy for it. I've played it with my friends, not historical stuff, but just, us goofing off. But it's funny to watch the kids play it because they get so into it. But it also makes them, when you have a good group of kids and they're each putting in 5 clues, it makes them really get and understand that information. Because now they're seeing it 3 times, right? They're talking it out first, they're acting it out second, and then they're trying to explain it in one word. And so it's always interesting watching how their brains kind of have to wrap themselves around that to get it done. So that we really enjoy playing. And again, it's bringing fun into the classroom, but at the same time, keeping that learning aspect going. Does anyone have like other things they want to share, like tips that you're doing in your classroom that's really engaging students? I think it's always great when teachers can kind of throw their thoughts out there and share thoughts, because we can learn so much from each other that to bring back to our own classrooms. So feel free, if anyone wants to comment on the great things that they're doing in their classrooms, that would be awesome. Come on, I'm sure people have some great things going on. The Remind was an awesome tool I'm excited for. Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah, I mean, and that's funny because timelines are something I try to tell my students right before as we're studying for a period exam. So coming up, they'll have a period 2 test, and I tell them, think of all the key terms we've had from this and see, like mentally in your mind, if you can put them on a timeline, talk about all their different connections. And so that's a great game to play too. Especially because you could kind of get them up and have them move the different cards around and everything to where they belong on a timeline. That's awesome. I actually think I'm going to try that. That's a really good one. You could totally, I can just see how my students would do this, because they always want to have everything a game. But if you put like a start time, a start date, and an end date on the board, and we have 3 different boards in our classroom, and I can kind of divide them up, and they all have the same index cards, and they got to get them right, and whoever buzzes in first with all of them correct. Oh, okay, so it's another person using American Pageant. Oh, I like that. It's funny because students really think they like to bring on the fluff, and that's one of the hardest things for them to be able to do when they have to really narrow down what it is that they're writing. So yeah, that's a great idea as well. I don't think I have the American Pageant activity book, though. I'm going to have to look into that. These are all great ideas that you have. I like the idea of having the class vote on who has the best one, because again, that competition aspect always makes it fun. And the presidents, yeah, and then you have to guess the event or the trade. That's a really, you could even do with the president one, you could almost do like a heads up type situation too. I think that's what it's called, where you would put it on your forehead type thing and try to describe it to the person who has it on their forehead to see if they can guess what the president is and how quickly they can go through it. I mean, and that's the thing that we have to do in these history classes, because I think so many students, and I get this from parents all the time, like, oh, your classroom must be like just talking at your students. They just need to memorize things and then they're done, which is totally not history. So it's great when we bring in all these different aspects that can really make the classroom come alive for the students. Nice. Now that's a really great idea too. I like that. Yeah, and it also, takes that's a game or an activity right there that's going to take their skill level to a whole nother level of critical thinking and persuasion and understanding the medium. And that's a great activity. Yeah, that's a great one to do. I've seen someone do some, not really similar to that, but kind of going off that idea of have role playing, where it's a Shark Tank, but for inventions that were made during, the time periods that we study. And so students kind of have to sell their inventions, so to speak, and why, going back in time to that time period, why that invention would be so important. That's been a fun one to see get done. Oh, speed dating. Now that's something I could see my students getting behind. Speed dating. Yeah, speed dating and Shark Tank, all these different things that, again, students can somehow relate to their own lives, which is always a good thing to do. But the speed dating, I'm trying to think in my head, that would be interesting. Oh, these cats. Anyone else out there have any ideas to share? These are all like wonderful ideas that for sure are going to be awesome to have in the classroom. So how long have you all been teaching APUSH? This is I think this is like my 5th or my 6th year maybe doing it. Yeah, it's somewhere around there for me. Oh, very cool. It's much better when you can get the first full year under your belt, because I had come in at one point halfway through the year and it's really hard to pick up there. But when you can plan it out the first full year, that's awesome. Okay. World history is the one I have never done. I've done AP Euro, and AP Comparative Government and Politics, and then AP US Government and Politics. But AP World is one that I've never touched. That's an interesting one I've heard, especially with the changes that were made this year. Government's a great one. That's another fun one. We do another fantasy type game. Yeah, government's a really fun one because it's so relatable to everything they're experiencing today. Any other thoughts or questions or anything else I can offer as far as information of really ways to make the classroom a positive experience? Oh, thank you so much for that. I'm going to get my chair to order that book for me tomorrow. Thank you. Because we definitely need more ideas to flow into the classroom always. Has anyone tried screencasting or having their students screencast a lesson? That's something else too I've done with my students. Like if I'm not in school one day, I'll screencast so they're not kind of missing too much information, especially because days can be so tight, or even on snow days, I'll screencast for them. They hate that, but I've also had them screencast or even use Flipgrid, which has been a lot of fun to watch. So where they're making videos. Yeah, Screencast-O-Matic is the one I use. I have flipped my government course a couple years back. And it was cool because I found that the parents actually knew what was going on in the classroom by doing that, because they would be hearing the videos at home. And so they actually knew what their students were learning through the flipping. Yeah, Flipgrid we did a lot for our snow days last year. And it was just really cool. It became a little overwhelming when each student was trying to comment with another video on another student's video. So if one student made a video, then you would have 15 reply videos attached to it. So that became a little bit overwhelming at some time. Well, that's a good idea to use screencasts to go over quizzes and tests. Yeah, that's really a great idea, because that's another way to save time in the classroom. But at the same time, it's really important to go over that information. That's a great idea. I might start doing that with the writing portion of the exam, because a lot of time I find, I don't know if you all see the same thing, but with the essays, I find that's the same common mistakes that students are making on the DBQs and the long essays. So I think that would be huge. Now, do you all do, because I know some schools do APUSH over a 2-year time period. I do it just over a 1-year time period. So it is a huge time crunch to get that in. And it's really hard to miss. Yeah, it's really hard to miss, especially for us. We get, I don't know where, so Georgia, maybe you get hurricane days here or there. But we get slammed. I'm in New Jersey with snow days. And so it's really difficult sometimes when we're missing days. And we're also an independent school, so our school year tends to be shorter to begin with, which doesn't make it easy either with all of our vacations. Oh, yeah, we do AP World over 2 years. That's the only AP exam that we use for a 2-year time period. All of our other ones are just 1 year. And I find AP US in 1 year is a lot. So AP Classroom has been interesting because my school uses Albert, and I think AP Classroom is coming out to try to, I don't know, rival Albert maybe. But I'm not impressed with the multiple choice questions on AP Classroom. I don't feel like they're in the style of the AP exam, but I'm not sure if they're really preparing students fully for how tough those questions can be. And the students I know have a lot of issues tech-wise with AP Classroom. And yes, the website is horrible. That's why we're big Albert people at my school. We love Albert. The questions are difficult, but the data you get from it is huge. I know we're sometimes just as bad as the students as far as not watching videos or reading directions and just jumping in and figuring it out on our own. That is a definite. But if you have the opportunity, definitely check out Albert because it gives you great analytics. If you have your students use their multiple choice questions all year, individually, it will tell students where they need to study come the springtime. And then I'll get a whole class report of these are the content issues I should focus on in my review. And then these are styles of questions, whether it's, they're having difficulty with political cartoons or they're having difficulty with more synthesis type questions. And it really helped me tailor my review last spring because we used it all year long. And it gives them, for each time period, there's probably about 120 to 150 multiple choice questions that they can practice with. And sometimes I assign it as an assignment, like they have to do it. And sometimes I just give them access to it and they can kind of do it for fun or to practice for an exam. Yeah, I understand that too, because I feel like the first day of class after I went over the syllabus, there was a lot of that because we had to have them sign into AP Classroom. And then, we use Albert, so we had to have them sign into that. I had them sign into Fiveable. So there is definitely a lot for them to sign into. So I'm trying to, limit, the sign-ins as much as possible to the ones that really bring the most relevance to the classroom. Yeah, that was a new feature this year that really threw off my students about the fact that you had to sign into AP like that. And a lot of them didn't know their passwords. They didn't know their logins. Some of them got locked out of the accounts. And in order to get past the locked out, they had to call themselves College Board to reset their accounts. No one else was allowed to do it for them. And it ended up causing more frustration on our end that they had to do it that way. Which Norton textbook do you use? Because we've used the American Pageant for years now, but we're always thinking of possibly changing things up. I kind of like the dry sense of humor in American Pageant. The students find it humorous. Exactly. Give me liberty. Okay, I'll have to look into that. So I'm definitely always looking for new resources or trying to just change it up a little bit with them as far as what they're reading. Is it a huge one? Because I know they see American Pageant and they freak out at times at how big it is. But I do find those authors funny. Oh, I didn't even think of international students and the difficulty. Yes. That is, yeah, we had an international student a couple years ago, and it's true. I had to give her some supplements because she was really struggling with American Pageant. A lot of my students like to get the AMSCO book just as a review tool, which I think is great. Yeah, it is true. Some of his jokes, I could see how it would go over some of their heads. For us, it's our juniors and seniors who take AP US History. So for the most part, I think a lot of them get the jokes, but there are some of them who definitely definitely don't get some of the jokes that he has. Okay, I'm going to have to look at both of these different textbooks. This is great to know. And are they directed towards the AP exam? Because I know, like, with the American pageant, you can get like the AP version of it. So are the Give Me Liberty 2 and America's History, would those be directed towards the AP exam? Oh, that's great. Awesome. Perfect. All right, so that's really good to know. I'll definitely have to see if I can get review copies of them to check out before we order for next year. That's really good. Oh, okay. So it's even better to know that colleges are using it. Yeah, I feel like American Pageant for years was like the go-to for APUS, but I feel like it is kind of, you know, there's a lot of other ones that are coming out that offer a little bit more now than it does. I'm just going to switch this just to give you all a reminder. Have a lot of your students been using these videos, the Fiveable videos? Do you share them in your class, like tell them what's upcoming and stuff like that? Because I know my students just started watching, and they found them super helpful so far. But I feel like they just started because they weren't really, you know, in the beginning they were still a little like hesitant and nervous. But now I find that Fiveable is actually helping to create, you know, that positive culture in the classroom because they're getting much more into it. And it's fun. I'd like too that they're getting to hear from different teachers, which is awesome. Okay. You know, that's the thing too that I was wondering where teachers are, because it's always so, especially Georgia, because you all probably went back to school, I would think. Yeah. Wow. August 1st. Okay. So we didn't go back to school until the Wednesday after Labor Day, which I think was like 5th or 6th or something like that. So you all were back in school a month before us. Wow. Okay. And with my students, I only see them every other day because we have 75-minute periods. And for the juniors and seniors, it's like the first couple of weeks they're on a retreat, they're on college visits with the school. So I feel like I've only actually seen them, I think I've had 3 APUSH classes since the school year started. Yeah, I always fall behind myself. It's hard with all these different things that come up, and I know my students are constantly being pulled out for sports, and you know, the colleges right now is a big thing. They're all going on these college trips to go visit, and there's just no classes I feel like taking place. Because I've definitely only seen them 3. Tomorrow will be my 4th class of the school year with my APUSH students. So that's why we're still on period 2. And I try to give them period 1 and period 2 as a summer assignment. So we're really just kind of quickly, in a sense, reviewing period 2, and then we'll pick up with period 3 next week and really jump into it. But they did a lot of work over the summer, actually watching Tom Ritchie videos on YouTube with period 1 and period 2. He's another great resource. I think, and you know, it's funny, I think with all history teachers, we all have that. And I think that's awesome for students to see too, that there's certain things within history that we have a passion for, because by showing that gets students super excited. So for me, it's for sure like the Constitutional Convention and the foundations of our government. And they know it too. And, you know, but it engages them to see how excited I get when I talk about it. So that's awesome. It's always so good to hear like the different things. Glorious Revolution, that's really cool. And that's another great thing I think about Fiveable too, is you're going to be hearing from teachers who have passions for, you know, different topics within history. So maybe if your teacher wasn't excited about something, it'll get you a little bit more excited when you hear from another teacher talking about it. Oh, okay. Yeah, Constitution and amendments are fun. I show them there is I forget the movie. There was a movie with John Goodman and Melanie Griffith years ago, and they basically made a song to the 12 Days of Christmas about the amendments. I don't know if you've ever heard it. You can find it on YouTube. It's pretty funny, but it goes through like the first so many amendments, but it's hysterical to watch. It's like a classic 80s movie. I think John Goodman's some sort of like shady politician or something, but it's a great, and I always show my students that song because it's funny to watch as they're, singing to the amendments with that Christmas tune. Born Yesterday. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. Yeah. They're like all sitting around at a restaurant singing it. See, and this is, Google, my students Google lots in class, and that's the great thing about technology today, that we have access to that for them to do it, which is so awesome. But yeah, definitely check out that Born Yesterday clip. You will enjoy it. There's no doubt about that. And then hit us up on social media. We have some great streams coming up. Again, even the ones that are kind of more lesson-based, getting teachers in, and when students are asking questions, anyone responding in the sidebar and keeping those conversations going, that's always awesome. I have so much enjoyed the conversation with the two of you tonight. I'm definitely going to be sending Miranda both your names to win some Fiveable swag, hopefully, in the raffle that she's doing, because you all kept this conversation going and made it so great. And I cannot thank you enough and very much appreciate that. But some cool swag that she's giving away. So I'm hoping that, one of you will definitely be lucky enough to get it. I'm going to send her your names. But thanks so much for joining tonight. And definitely come back for some more. And if there's ever anything, any topics or anything you think we should be covering that we're not, or anything along those lines, like, please definitely let us know. We're always looking for what we can be adding. And even if it's just like getting teachers together and having all of us have a huge conversation together, that could also probably be of some benefit. Getting all of our history brains going, or even if it's us just storking out and talking about history. That's always a good time too, right? So thank you so much, and good luck with your school years, but hopefully I'll be talking to you all again as we continue with these videos throughout the year. Thank you.